And see, I think that's the key because, like I said, we have this war, this gender war that's been going on, and I'm just being real. I mean, if you really sit down and analyze it, and a lot of people have talked about it, it's funny how we get these ebbs and flows.
Mm.
Where at one time people will really be concentrating on one particular concept, idea, whatever, and then they slide it to another concept, idea, and that becomes a new popular piece of the bigger gender war.
Yep.
But about a couple of months ago, the big thing was for the first time, people seriously started to talk about single parents,
Mm-hmm.
which was interesting because in the very beginning we were talking about single parents. And then it finally flowed back around to single parenting. And a lot of people started to see that, wow, this is different. And I remember I was watching one particular video where this one lady who was raised by a single mom, she had dated this one guy that was raised by two parents. And I think they
Mm-hmm.
might have dated 6 months to a year or something like that. And she said she would never go back to dating a man that was just raised by a single mom. She said the situation was so different, monumentally different. You know, the way he treated her, the way, all of what she went through. And she even said, well, there might be some bad ones out there, but that guy was such at another level that
Mm-hmm.
it just changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And my big thing with a lot of that, type of information is I'm kind of like, when you deal with the people who are come from single parents, the only issue they really, I mean, from dual parents, there was a healthy home. I gotta say healthy home because there's always somebody in my comments is like, you ain't say. I mean, I don't know a lot of people. They was always,
Right.
every people that
Supposed
stay
to be.
together ain't always happy. I always gotta say that. But what I've noticed is when you have those people, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest problem those people have is finding each other. But when they
Mm-hmm.
find each other, they're married like that.
Yep.
But it's the rest of them. It's generally the ones that come from single parents or they come from the hybrids, where maybe
Mm-hmm.
their parents were married for 8 years, and
And
then
then
now dad moved out of state or something like that. So they're in these hybrids. Um, and then like I said, you always have that person that defies the rules or whatever. So it's like, should we be sitting around, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Should we be worried about it? Because like white people, they ain't even worried about it. Back in the day when I was growing up, they had a real easy word. It was either you was like white, like what we consider white, or you was poor white trash.
yep. Yep.
Okay, and I've heard a lot of black people say stuff like that. They'll be like, "It's black people and it's the ninjas." I've heard ninjas. They trying to be polite with it.
Yep.
So they'll say the ninjas, right? And a lot of them are like, I'm not a ninja, so it ain't got nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
So should black people adopt that mindset and just be like, look, these people don't want this anyway. The opportunity's here. We talking about it, but y'all don't want it. And so why should we help you? Why should we do anything for you? We gonna get married anyway. We gonna be
Right.
living in our suburban houses. You
Right.
know, why should they care?
So, I mean, just from your statement, first and foremost, I just would like to point out that that would be assuming that everyone who comes from a single parent household is that quote unquote ninja, right? When that's not the case either.
That's true.
I also I do agree that people who come from two parent households do end up with better circumstances, right? They think better, they understand what it is to be in a relationship, they understand the balance. And people who do not have that, who are not fortunate enough to have that, struggle more. But there comes a time in life where you can either decide to work on yourself
Hmm.
and become better and realize that you have those issues and work through them, or decide that you're okay with the struggle you are. I think the work should stop as far as us caring as much once those people decide that they don't care.
Hmm.
I'm struggling. I know I have anger issues. I know I don't deal with things well. I know I'm not good in a relationship. That's when you can no longer do anything.
Hmm.
Because the old saying goes, you can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink.
That's true.
So if you know you have all of these issues and you're still not deciding to work on them and to look yourself in the mirror and see those issues, because let's be honest, right? We like to talk about people that come from single parent households as if they are the problem when that's a circumstance that they couldn't control. I couldn't control
Hmm.
my parents being together, just like you couldn't necessarily control your parents staying together.
Hmm.
It just happened to be your upbringing. Because of that upbringing, now you have deficiencies. But it's up to you to point that out, to realize that, and decide to start working on that. Like I stated, if the work isn't being done,
Hmm.
then yeah, we can leave them alone because we can't force anything on anyone. But if the work is actually being done, if people are trying to become better, then I don't think that we should give up on them just because of their circumstances. Because you can't control your circumstances, you can just work through them.
Well, I mean, I think that works because, like I said, there are going to be people that come from those environments, like to your point, that work through them. A really
Mhm.
good friend of mine, he's married, been married for over 25 years. He comes from a double, single mom situation where his mom was a single mom and then she only had the grandmother. But the thing about it, to your point, was he wanted something better. And
Right.
even though she was a single mom, she taught him something better.
Mhm.
And I think the issue is, and it's not really a two parent or one parent household thing. It's more of a cultural understanding, I think, of the other side. Because if you can get somebody to point A, a lot of times they themselves can make it to point B.
Mhm.
But what I think the issue that we're having, especially in the black community, and I think this is the one thing that social media has ran with, is that there is a window. See,
Mhm.
and that's the key. There is a window to make all these things happen. Like when I was talking to Humble Dad, he really believes that people should get married in their early 20s, pretty much as soon as possible, because he's
Mhm.
very concerned about soul ties. And for
Mhm.
me, I don't believe men should get married or even start thinking about getting married until they're 28, heading
Mhm.
into their 30s, because I want them to have 5 to 6 years to get their money right. And if they came out of high school and they didn't go to another school, that's fine. But now you have 10 years to try to
Yeah.
figure out your money situation before you start looking for a wife. And I
Mhm.
think women should be dating up. Black women need to stop dating, in my opinion, men that are just 2 or 3 years around their age. I think they should be dating almost 10 years up.
Mhm.
Okay, because that's going to give them a much better man that's going to be closer to what they want, as far as money, power, resources,
Right.
and that would work better. Now, I bring all this, together on the point of, okay, so with the window closing, with this
Mhm.
concept that a woman, as she gets closer and closer to 35, she's going into what they call geriatric pregnancy. She's getting in a
Mhm.
situation where she can't have children. And men
Mhm.
that have money, the number one thing that they want besides a good wife is children. And
Right.
a man that generally has become a doctor or a lawyer or done something else major like that, as far as money is concerned, he is not going to sit around and basically deal with a situation where he's talking to a woman and she's like, well, I don't want to have kids anymore.
Right.
And more than likely, he ain't had no kids. Okay, so yeah, so how do women handle, like I said, that closing window between 18 and 35 when they're trying to figure it out? They're trying to figure out men. And at the
Mhm.
meantime, like I said, you have these men up here and they're not waiting. They're going to take the first thing that's ready, fully qualified, ready to rock and roll. So, what can we do to help those women?
So when you first talked about the question, we was talking about women 30s and over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to address that first. I think, unfortunately, and a lot of women may be upset with me on this one, but we have to change our standards on what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So in that boat, you probably can't go for the man that's at that 1%,
Mm-hmm.
the man that is making all of this money and he has no children and he is looking for a specific woman just to build a family with.
Mm-hmm.
You need to look for more of an average man, a day
Mm-hmm.
to day. Maybe he's already had a child,
Mm-hmm.
maybe someone who has already experienced things. And that may not sound ideal, But I think a lot of women pass up a lot of good men searching for that 1%. When the issue when you're searching for those type of men is that everybody's searching for them.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't even stand out.
Mm-hmm.
How could you stand out to him when he has 50 other women like you or younger than you in competition with you for that exact same person? Right? So, first of all, would be standards. We need to change them. And I'm not stating that this man has to work down in Walmart somewhere. He can also have a very prosperous career. He can be very much so minimum wage. Maybe he makes 75,000. Maybe he makes 50,000. But I have the mentality that as long as you're making money, if I can put my money with your money, we can always move forward. We can always do better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first thing we have to do is stop chasing after that 1%, that quote unquote ideal high valued man, right? And then you also have to look at yourself. And unfortunately, your market value, I hate when people say that, but it is a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you fall into that category for that specific type of man, okay, you have to be more realistic. Now, for women that are younger, I thought it was very important that you stated you don't think men should get married till 28. I am a big advocate for I don't think women should get married until their mid 20s. And the reason I say this is because from high school through, let's say, college, there are a lot of changes that a woman goes through mentally, physically, what you're going for in life, what you think you're attracted to, and what you think you want.
Mm-hmm.
I think a woman has to figure out what exactly she wants. And the problem is that we feel all women should want a family and want children, when the reality of the situation is that is not the story for every woman.
Mm-hmm.
So once a woman figures out what she actually wants to go for, are you looking to be that career boss chick, or do you actually want to be a wife? From there, I feel that a woman should start looking for a husband. And I think that doesn't even realistically happen until a woman is around 23, 24 years old. Because at 25 is when most women really start thinking about families, children, things of that nature. There are a lot of women that I hear that got married really young, and their biggest argument on why they decide to get divorced is because they didn't know themselves. They didn't know what they wanted. They married the first person they thought they fell in love with, and for them, they outgrew them. Now, there's a lot of different arguments around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can decide to continue to try to rebuild a relationship and figure out if you can grow with a
Mm-hmm.
person. But let's be honest, sometimes throughout life, you will outgrow people. So I think you yourself have to be mentally grown and stable and know who you are and be confident in that before you can decide to commit your life to a person. Because the biggest issue in our community is that we all get married with this idea as if we're just having a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you can get out of it at any time. When marriage, if we're being honest, is supposed to be a lifetime
Mm-hmm.
commitment.
No,
You should go into it without ever thinking you're going to leave. So I think you have to understand who you are first. For the women that are still young, 18 and over. For the women who are 30 and over, you might have to change up your standards. You
mm-hmm.
might end up with a man who already has a child, and you have to be okay with that. Especially if, like you stated, you are at that time where that window is closing. Now, of course, technology is becoming amazing. Women can, freeze their eggs. Women are able to have children longer. Now, over 35, it is more complicated, right? You can have more issues, but it's still a possibility. So that's something you also have to look into and take into consideration. But I do think what women, especially what they're pushing on social media and what they're going after, isn't realistic. They have to be realistic about what they want and what their standards are. This goes for men too, because honestly, a lot of men who
Mm-hmm.
are in that red pill phase feel that they are high value men when in reality, you're not. You're an average man, and that's okay. For some reason now in society, being average is just like being scum. I don't know where that came from. Being average is okay. Most of us are average. And you go find you another average person and you figure out life together.
Well, I mean, I think that's just what happens anytime you create some kind of honor. We all want to be honored. If you're an actor, you want an Oscar. If you're a singer, I think it's Grammy, so you're gonna want a Grammy. So that's just how people are. And I think that when they came up in dating, this concept of a high value man, high value woman, at that point, now that becomes the goal. That becomes what everybody wants. Women say it, and men now, lust after it, and then in reverse, women go through things where they feel like they got to have a BBL, they got to have, breast implants, they got to have all this other kind of stuff because they feel the pressure.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that, most people are average, but I also believe, and this is just one of the things that's on my channel, it's not out there in the whole world, but I
Mhm.
actually believe everybody's attractive.
Yeah.
I think
To-
that, huh? Say again?
I said to someone.
Yeah, and that's my point to
Yeah.
someone. And
Everybody
my
attracted.
thing has always been just try to make yourself the best you can be. But what I
Right.
find is a lot of people, they'll get to a certain point in their life, and because they have not achieved this high thing, they just
Hmm.
give up.
Yeah.
So, like, I've literally run into women that, in my opinion, would have turned heads anywhere they go. But
Hmm.
they, a long time ago, I mean, even having conversations with them a long time ago, generally in middle school, somebody told them that they weren't cute because in
Hmm.
that region of the world or the states or whatever, that city didn't like their look. And so at
Hmm.
that point, they just started studying or they started to get into something else and they started putting all their energy over there instead of putting energy in beauty. And beauty is something that people don't understand that parents invest in beauty in their children. Like you
Hmm.
invest in your child going to a dermatologist, you invest in your child having good hair, getting, your hair done or whatever. You're investing in haircuts, you're investing in everything. And that builds the child's confidence, but it also teaches the child. Like I run into women who are over, 35, 40 that don't know how to put on makeup because they've never invested any time in doing it because when they were 13, they thought they were ugly. So at that point, they never ever did anything. That's my whole point. And see, that's
Yeah.
a skill.
They just out to do it. I don't know how to put on makeup. So I don't, I know how to put on maybe like a lipstick.
But I'm talking about some people don't even understand that. Like I've talked to women, because I mean, like you got great skin. I run into other women that have great skin, and so it's not all about the foundation and the contouring and stuff like that. Because most guys don't like that anyway.
Right.
But when you
Yeah.
start to talk about lipstick, it is so many women that don't even wear lipstick, and lipstick ain't nothing but chapstick. I mean, anybody
Yeah.
put that on, but it's the mindset.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to, put eyeliner on. I don't do this. I barely know how to do my hair. I don't cut my own hair. I always go to the beauty shop. It's
Yeah.
like there's just that point, or they don't even know how to pick out their clothes.
Yeah.
I run into women that don't know how to walk in heels.
Hmm.
And see, these are those to me minutia things that take a lot of women out of the game.
Yeah.
They
I
don't
can.
recognize it, but it takes them out of the game. And it's the same thing with men. Like I
Hmm.
ran into, and I say the story all the time. This guy, this was way before I had my channel, way before I was doing anything, and I was out probably 4 months divorced, and I went to this event, and there was nothing but men there. And that's
Hmm.
what was funny. Nothing but men. There was like 12 men, and the host was this black lady. And so I'm
Hmm.
talking to the black lady, and then this guy comes over, a white guy, and through
Hmm.
the conversations with him, find out he's a multimillionaire,
Mm.
multimillionaire white dude, and then he's like at least 6'2", 6'3".
Hmm.
Thin guy. So from a concept of me just telling you about him, like is that all the women just their ears just perk up, right? Oh shoot, you talking about somebody great. This dude did not press out his shirt. The whole shirt was wrinkly. The collar was up here like this. It looked like he had not combed his hair that morning.
Hmm.
And it's like none of the women would talk to him. But here
Hmm.
I am, 5'8.5", with my little blazer on, haircut, beard tight or whatever. And then the only woman that was there was talking to me. She wasn't talking to anybody else.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, and I guess that's part of my questions to this is we say we talk about these standards, but I think part one is, are, women out here putting in the effort to actually be the most attractive, the most kind, the most loving, the most supportive woman they can be. And that's part one of this. And then part two, because you were talking about standards, I've always talked about the fact that for me, as crazy as it sounds, I was married for 18 years. I met my ex-wife literally on the first day of class. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we dated for 5 years. I was married for 18 years. Then I get out into the dating world, and women aren't paying me any mind at all. Like I'm getting zero. Well, I shouldn't say zero love, but I'm getting very little love. Not as much love as I thought. Okay,
Right.
because depending upon what value system you look at, I'm a high value man. Depending
Mm-hmm.
upon what value system you use.
Right.
So I'm out here. I'm doing all of this right. And one of the things that I noticed was I was failing a lot because I am what a lot of women consider the stereotypical good guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not. I have a backbone, but I'm a
Mm-hmm.
I'm a nice guy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started my group and started to talk, and I'm still gonna be a nice guy. That's just who I am. But one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I noticed was, and I even heard women say stuff like this. They would say, "This guy wasn't my type, but he became my husband." And it was
Mm-hmm.
almost 50% of the married women that I run into, they would have that statement. So the argument of, okay, are these great men out here with no kids, with money, that that are decently attractive, that are doing this, that are doing that? The argument, and a lot of men that follow me, they're out there. They're those men, and
Mm-hmm.
then they'll get looked right past. And then the
Yeah.
woman will bypass to go to a man that maybe speaks better, maybe he's smoother in his speech and or in his way
Yep.
and all this other kind of stuff. And so what it does is for a lot of those men, it frustrates them. But then the women are saying, okay, we're trying to find these men. But my argument is they're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
See, the very ones that would fit every standard, where you don't have
Mm-hmm.
to drop your standards. You can have your
Mm-hmm.
standards exactly where you want them. They're here. You just don't recognize them because you've been chasing the guy with lower standards this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my two pieces that I would love for you to speak to. You know, are women placing themselves in a really great spot, first of all, and then second of all, can they get to the point where they can notice and know that the guy they've been chasing is trash, and the guy that they've been bypassing, that's the one they should have been going for.
Okay, so to answer the first question, I would say it depends on the woman, right? I would argue that I've seen since 2020 when everyone had to be locked in and we all got really used to having nothing but jogging suits on, and t shirts, that women may have not put in as much of an effort when it comes to their appearance. I also think, though, that there is a part of that that is a little bit deeper when it comes to maybe like childhood trauma. You spoke about how a lot of women learn these things from their parents, right? From their mothers. But if you grew up with, let's say, parents that didn't value those things or that put you down based off of your looks, you're more likely to go into a shell and not fully show yourself rather than be as confident, right? So all of that has to do with how a woman presents herself and how she decides to step out into the world. I do think it also comes down to how she takes care of herself. Women that aren't as confident in their looks, not necessarily that they don't find their face attractive, but maybe they don't like how their body looks. Maybe they haven't taken great care of themselves. They're not going to put on their best outfits because they don't feel good in them, right? They're going to
Hmm.
put on what makes them feel good, and that's usually something that's a little baggier. That's not as form fitting. That's not as attractive, maybe, to the male gaze. So I
Hmm.
think that also has something to do with it. Can women do more? Yes. But are there women that are doing that all the time? Yes. I really think it just depends on the woman. Um, when it comes to your second question, it's funny you say this. We just had a conversation on our last on the last podcast I was on about how women are looking for compatibility, right? They're looking for specific men that fit a criteria, but they can run into the man that they are compatible with and decide instead to go for a man that gives them butterflies. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people believe in that spark conversation. Did he make me feel some type of way? When a lot of us don't realize that if you dealt with trauma, bad relationships in the past, that spark might be your nervous system giving you a reaction, letting you know that that's not a good person for you. But you're taking it as,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, he makes me feel so good. He's so attractive. He's exactly what I like. He's the exact type of build, look. You know, he
Mm-hmm.
talks the same way that my ex talked, not taking into account that your ex is your ex for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he'll be better because he still fits my standard type. And I think that happens with women and men, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. It's just not on one side. But unfortunately, a lot of people chase that feeling instead of what's actually on their list. And the person that may fit all of those things on their list doesn't come in the package that
Mm-hmm.
seems as attractive to them for whatever reason. And it doesn't have to be that he's a bad looking guy, but he may be a little rough around the edges. Maybe he's totally different than anything you've experienced before. And unfortunately, I think it takes for women to fully have an epiphany moment, right? Like everything else that I've done didn't work. These other relationships and all these guys who look just alike didn't work, or their swag is the same, or they remind you of the same person. It didn't work. So now I have to totally shift to
Mm-hmm.
something different. And it takes for them to get to that mindset before they decide to make that shift. Now, does that mean that they will probably pass up a lot of good men? Probably. But I just think it's something that's very human and very natural for a lot of women and even men sometimes to do before they actually get to that point of realizing, okay, I need to stop chasing after what I think gives me that feeling and actually chase after what I know I need in a person.
No, I mean, like I say, that's great. I love it. Over here, I always talk about sexual nature.